All right, Alicia, thank you so much for your time today and joining us today on the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And so, we always like to start our episodes with a little bit of background. So, can you share with us your professional journey as to kind of what led you to transitioning from being a practitioner into leading the COCPA?
Absolutely. I love telling my personal story and I love hearing stories about CPAs because there's no one stories that is exactly the same. And that's what I really love about the accounting profession. But my story really started back probably earlier than most, but at the age of 9. And at the age of 9, um, I was with my sister who was in the job market. And back at that time, we used classified ads in newspapers to find jobs, which I imagine that most students today would not even think to open a newspaper to find a job. But
Or know
my
that
sister,
newspaper is open and they're not all just scrolling?
they're
There's a
not just
physical
scrolling.
indication of opening.
Exactly. It was paper, it was black and white, it
It
was
came to
thin
your door.
paper, and you got it every day. And so there was the whole pages of classified ads. And my sister was in the job market. So, and I was at her house and she said, she's quite a bit older than I. Why don't you just circle every job that has the word accounting in it? Because she was an accounts payable clerk and she was looking for an accounting job. And so, I was able to read. I would circle them. Thankfully, accounting is at the first of the classified ads, so I didn't have to go very deep into the paper. But I'm circling the ads that have the words accounting. So, of course, I read what it is and what they do. And, this one's looking at invoices and this one's doing journal entries and producing financial statements or a variety of things. And I thought, that's really interesting because from a very, very young age, I knew I wanted to do something with money because I could see in the world around me that money mattered and it also helped people get out of really tough situations. Money was an emotional thing, not just a physical thing. And so I knew I wanted to connect to people through money. And when I saw these words of accounting, I'm like, I think that's where it's at. These are people that help people and they deal with money. So when I got to college, I knew immediately, well, actually, high school, I wanted to study accounting, but there wasn't an accounting course. So I just went to the business teacher and said, can you come up with a course for me that studies accounting? And she did. She provided me with an independent study. And that was really the beginning of my professional journey because I knew I wanted to do it for the long haul. So I went to the University of Denver to study accounting because I knew they were a great school. Went through my master's program and, like many accounting students, landed my first job in the Big Four as an auditor at Ernst and Young. And, so many experiences serving in public accounting and the variety of clients that you get to see was phenomenal. So I was there for 9 years, made it to a senior manager role in the audit practice in Denver. And at that point in the time, you're kind of in your career going, you're always looking, what's the very next step I'm going to take and do I really want to take it? Right. And so you're considering that. And so the next step was partner. And I was really questioning, what does it mean to be a partner? Do I want to be a partner? Do I want to be a partner in a big firm? Do I want to be a partner in a small firm? Do I want to go work in an organization? What about nonprofits? All the world, came to be. And what I realized in that time, I did a lot of journey searching, and I'm like, whatever I do, it doesn't matter as long as I turn my passions into my paycheck. Because I knew that a paycheck's not enough to create a fulfilling career. Like, I need to be passionate about it. And when I challenged that, I thought, I really want to be in a place where I can advocate for other people, not just be in the business. I want to make sure that I leave my communities better than the way I experienced them the first time. And so that really led me to think, I think the biggest impact I can make is not within an accounting firm, but for accounting firms, for not for profits, and in different realms. So I actually changed my career path and stopped accounting and actually went to get my coaching certification because I knew that coaching was going to be an element of my work that I didn't have training in, but I would need to be able to coach businesses, executives, young people, all around. And so I actually got my coaching certification, started my own consulting business, and that kind of led me into different paths of I worked in nonprofit. I worked for a nonprofit as an assistant controller for a while. I did consulting. All the while, I was a member of the Colorado Society of CPAs since I was a student in college, all the way through that path. And I knew the value that in being involved in an organization like the Colorado Society of CPAs brought to me in my career transitions. So when the opportunity came up for me to serve as the chief financial officer, actually, in my first role, I was like, this is absolutely turning my passion into my paycheck. And I loved that role. And in the last 2 years, led me to the opportunity of being able to step into the CEO role. And now I absolutely don't do daily accounting, but I'm thinking about accounting and the professionals in accounting every single day. And I love being able to be their advocate.
Wow. I did not know that about you. And I think it's very interesting that you did coaching because we all get coached, and I didn't even know what coaching was. And so that's been something
Yes,
I've been doing for at least 5 years, maybe longer, but just how much a difference it makes in my professional career. But I feel like coaching is sort of a novel concept. Like it hasn't been that common for 20 years. Like maybe for 4 or 5, you're seeing it more,
correct.
but you're not, it wasn't a common thing. You know,
Yep,
I did a women's leadership program. There was some kind of women's
it
leadership program that
wasn't.
was out there. I don't think they have it anymore, but it wasn't through the society, but it was like its independent entity. And it was started by some women that are like, women need help, you know, institutional meaning employed by a big company,
Hmm.
just to have support with no matter what your practice area, just going after women in leadership. So yeah, and I know the society is doing more of that, as is the AICPA, just raising all levels for all boats. That's
Hmm.
interesting. You have that skill. That's important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, it's so important, and I think it's critical because I think the entire workforce has changed a little bit in how people grow and develop. And it used to kind of be that you had to force people into one training model, and coaching really is about meeting somebody where they are, not just asking them to be where you are. And so you're helping them take the very next step for them, and it's more personalized. And I really think that that kind of coaching mindset is so important. Yeah, there's a big talk in the profession now, and I think there's a lot of factors that have caused these shifts. But what we talk about in the profession now, and I love hearing Barry Blonson from the AICPA talk about it, and now these messages are coming around that we're really shifting from a triangle based accounting firm to what we call like more of like the Pentagon, where it's we don't we can't just take a bunch of young people and then hope they filter out to the top at some point, or they filter out and go out somewhere. We really are thinking about technology is taking over some of those early skills, and so we aren't using entry level people to do some of that work. There's outsourcing that we're filling some of that bigger bucket. And so what that means though is that we've got to elevate new professionals to work more in that middle model quicker, sooner, and we need more people in that middle manager spot for a longer period of time to help manage the technology, the outsourcing, some of those entry points. And so it becomes wider in the middle. And so it's more of this like octagon, kind of pentagon shape, because the truth is we just don't have enough people population wise to use that kind of triangle model where we just flow a ton of people in and we only then elevate a few. And the other thing is that accounting now serves such a broader landscape of business need than it once did. And so even the partners at that top can't just be a few experts. Like the partners actually that are serving clients have to be skilled in a variety of different areas, and there's no way that one particular professional can have that broad level of deep expertise. And so you really do need to think about partnership at a wider level across the plane. And so I think it really does pull apart the top, but then it pulls apart the middle. And then really what we're seeing is that the bottom is narrowing. So how do people really expedite their learning to what we typically in our past
Right. Well, that's what
experience
you
more,
did. And then, like,
between the
how
years of
long do I
3 and
need to do it?
6,
Yeah. How many
right?
busy seasons? How many? Yeah. No, I think it was a failing of like, you have to conform to this certain role. And then I think what I felt by the time I left, I mean, I kid you not, Deloitte had 30% attrition. So basically, the entire firm turns around in 3 years, the entire firm. So when you have people that have been there 20, 30 years, are like, what's wrong with you? Why are you still here? Now, obviously, they enjoyed it. It was valuable to them. They liked the diversity. Maybe they didn't want to go to one place because certainly all of us were getting recruited right, left, and down the middle to leave. That you never were sure that people wouldn't be getting a better job offer. So it is.
Right.
And then when people leave, why? Right? Because you lose that institutional knowledge. And I think that is tough to retrain, retool, build up. And I know that's what the Big Four especially has done. Like, bring in smart people, keep training them up because you expect them to leave, and it's sort of your business development as well. But it doesn't always lead to a great fulfill. It
It is
is, right?
business
I remember
development,
at PW, it was
absolutely.
like, those people are our clients. Your peers are your clients because they're going to go and run those companies at some point, be the CFOs, controllers,
That's right.
whatever. Yeah. So, yeah. And I think that's actually another reason why being a CPA is so amazing. There's so many things you can do if you can understand the business footprint and money, how money is made, how it's spent.
What are some of those challenges that you're seeing or talking about or maybe discussing internally with the Colorado Society? We have a team member. We have a team member
Mhm.
who's on the board of the Texas Society of CPAs, and that's one of their biggest focuses about the diminishing profession, more or less, like young people not wanting to be in this profession. So, what are some of those conversations, within the Colorado Society to kind of get people, kind of back into the accounting profession? Because obviously, we all picked it. We are still
Right.
practicing in various capacities, and so there's that passion there. But do you have any insights as to maybe why or ideas on how to quote unquote fix it? And if you did, you'd be rich and famous.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely. It's been the I would say the hottest topic, in my particular world in the last 2 years, and it really heated up, I think, post COVID. But I think during the middle of COVID, we had so many other things on our plate just trying to do that we couldn't really pay attention to what was going on around us. So much regulation and things coming out during that time. But it has been one of the hottest topics, and the AICPA actually created and kind of an independent group called the National Pipeline Advisory Group about a year ago. And they've spent the last year engaging a variety of stakeholders in a process, including the state societies and our members. We've created pipeline focus groups, trying to get our members to be involved in surveys, including students doing surveys, all trying to kind of gather like what is really the experience going on. Can we identify some root causes of what has led us to this point, what's going on, and then maybe identifying solutions that could help us in the short term and long term get to a better place, from a staffing perspective. And some of the work that's come out of that is really there's some high level themes, and it is not one thing. And I think that's what's so challenging is you might read the opinion of somebody that, well, this is the one thing. Well, this is the one thing. Well, this is the one thing. Well, no, it's really a system of things that is working together, and it's a bunch of wheels in motion. And so how do you then think about each of those wheels and the parts that they play and how one then impacts the other? And so um, the themes really that have emerged is that, to be honest, us as accountants, we're not great marketers. So we haven't been telling a compelling story about what does it the profession mean? What does it look like? I mean, even from the perspective, Judy, that you just shared with like you were an entrepreneur in some ways, even though you're within a large firm of building this big practice and the types of salaries that people can make over their career. We don't typically boast about those kinds of things. We keep that information behind shut doors. And so, with this concept of pay transparency, a lot of students don't see the long term benefit. They only see what's the starting salary and is that worth the time that I'm going to invest in education to do it. So I think that we've definitely realized, and we like to tell war stories. we like to tell about the time that we stayed in the audit room until midnight. We did this. And in some ways,
I
we've learned
slept in
how
the
to trauma.
office. I boarded
Yeah,
my dog because I wasn't
exactly.
going to go home. And
Like we've learned
yeah.
how to trauma bond. Like that one time we went through this trauma, we became really good friends. But like we don't talk about like how cool it was that because I did that, I spent the summer in Africa, and I got to go here and do this. And we just don't talk about that. We talk about like the poor experiences we had, which is not a
No,
great
it's
marketing
true.
technique. And
Right.
so
I
people
Glass
stayed
hear
in public
that.
doors
accounting because
full of
I had
the horror
32 days of
stories.
vacation every year. I used it. I didn't leave Deloitte with much time in the bank. I mean, I
Absolutely.
traveled to Europe multiple times. I mean, I wouldn't take a job in industry because I couldn't just do 2 weeks of vacation a year. That's only enough time to visit my
Yeah, you
family.
looked at
I'm
it and
like,
you're
I'm
like,
not going to do no 2 weeks. And I want to be able to
two
take three
weeks.
weeks in a row because you know what? There's redundancy because I'm not the
Absolutely.
only one who does what I do. So my clients will still be served when I leave. And that's huge. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
100%.
So the stories that we've told over time, like we really have to really think about the stories that we're making ourselves. The story we are making today is the story we have to sell to other people. And so it's like looking at ourselves saying, am I creating a story that is worth living for me and for somebody else? And then am I telling that story to somebody else? And so I think that's what a really big component. Obviously, there's a return on investment equation to all of this. And I think salaries in accounting, it is a fact, it's data we can look at. Over the last 6 years, they rose about 16%, which we could look at and say that's great. On the other hand, the consumer price index far exceeded that. And so accountants in general have lost earnings power over the last 6 years, whereas other fields like computer information, technology, marketing, um, mathematics, some of those have actually increased at a way higher pace. And so when I'm sitting there and I've said I want to go to business, I'm a college grad, I'm thinking, do I want to become a marketing major where there's no regulation? I can get a higher paid salary. I only have to do 4 years. Obviously, the return on investment is going to look really a lot higher for some of these other business degrees than accounting when I need to take 150 hours of education. I have to pass a very rigorous exam. I have to make sure I get accounting experience under a certified CPA. And then I'm only going to make, half of what some of my other grads. I mean, it's just not a great business sell. I mean, so really when we think about that, we have to think what really is the value of the CPA. And I think that, the marketplace demands that we have a professionalism, that we have a high level of knowledge and expertise. And so we need to make them think about the value of that monetarily so that we can pay people to do the same thing. And we also haven't been great salespeople in selling our value and saying, look, I'm offering you not just great, compliance, that I'm offering you strategic cost savings over the long haul. And that's an investment you need to be making in these services, whether I'm internal or whether I'm an external consultant. It doesn't matter. You need to value the role that accounting can play in your business. Um, so I think that really from both, the marketing standpoint of our profession, the selling of our services, then helps us with the HR issue we have and being able to pay people equivalent or more to what some of these other professions are. So there's really along the whole path a variety of issues, and if the demand isn't there, then we do have to re-look and say, well, is the barrier to entry too high? Are we expecting too much in the educational and experience and the exam? Like, if the marketplace doesn't need that, then do we need those kinds of levels? Now, I would argue they do. They expect that. We sell trust. We don't just sell numbers, and trust comes at a price.
Yeah. Well, other thing that concerns me is just the offshoring of different labor costs to get a differential. I mean, the differential in cost is like 50 times different. And I'm not a big fan of that personally. I really understand the strategic value of that. Why aren't we paying the true cost of things as well? Like, everybody like, I feel like even some of the area like sales tax is a great example. You have to file those returns every month. People sell them for so cheap, and the compliance effort is so high that you can't sell it for the same price. But that's what they do because it makes it easier to sell. But you can't actually physically do it, even with technology, because it's not an automated system when you input it to the state. So there's just this disconnect between ongoing compliance and the actual cost of it. And what we do is we absorb that cost by hiring cheaper labor in other nations. And I think that's an interesting way to basically not recognize the true cost. And if people understood the true cost of some of these issues, then we would have different laws to make the compliance
Right.
easier, which is, of course, why I'm on this task force, because our legislators don't understand how much more difficult Colorado state filings are than any other state. It's 71 times more expensive to be in compliance in Colorado than any other state. There's a problem with that. We need to
Absolutely.
rethink that because it's a voluntary system of filing all the things. All the things. Even, I mean, you're publicly held, you're still voluntarily putting yourself into the system,
Right.
right? So, yeah, it's just, it doesn't need to be so darn difficult. But
And I
yeah,
think
anyway, it's all very
it is.
interesting
And I
in
think
that
that's
regard
the role
too.
that I think people underestimate the role that they can play as an accounting professional in really thinking through some of those systemic issues in society and how they can actually have a voice in that process. And I think we met in that process trying to be voices and understanding what's happening at the forefront of the laws before it gets too far down the road that now I'm just having to comply with something that I never had any stakeholder input up front. And I think really, one of the hard parts of our profession is that we have been so buried in just trying to get the work done that sometimes things are happening before we even know they're happening. And so really, at the Colorado Society of CPAs, one of my key roles is really just trying to make sure that CPAs are in rooms where conversations are being happening now that could then impact what you're trying to implement 5 years from now. And right now, we're trying to undo, I think, from the sales and use tax simplification processes, things that have been in place for a long time. But how can we avoid some of those things in the long term? And that really is being a stakeholder in those places. And that's really why, yeah, we could sit here and complain about the regulatory, or we can do something about it, right? And that's what I love.
Right. And it takes time
It
to get it done, but
does.
we could get it done, right? We could. And then the education and the awareness. I mean, I can't tell you many conversations I've had about what is Nexus.
Yeah,
I mean, that people don't get that. It's like that should just be known if you're a business owner, but it's
it's
not.
not.
So there is a definite challenge with like understanding the laws in our
And
nation.
even as an accountant, I mean, I'm a CPA. I was a practicing CPA in an accounting firm. Obviously, I had a focus in audit. I knew enough about tax to be dangerous, but not a lot. And I remember leaving public accounting and going into my first company where I'm like really trying to help them develop their systems of accounting. And I'm like, sales tax. I mean, I think don't they just bill you and you pay it? Like, what are you? I didn't even understand it. And so when you dig into some of these things, you're like, wow, government really is asking businesses to understand and do a lot just to comply and give them some of the revenue. And you're like, wow, like there's just so much put on a business owner in what they have to understand in a variety of different issues. And even as a CPA, I didn't understand it. So it is a definite challenge, and I'm learning way more tax than I thought I would ever learn
Mm,
because I think it's one of those areas that is constantly changing. I think some of the financial statements, principle based audit regulations are under scrutiny and change, but they do not change at the same pace as tax.
right. Well, and so taking just a quick step back, for those who may not be familiar, can you explain the purpose and the mission of the Colorado Society of CPAs?
Absolutely, I love that. The Colorado Society of CPAs is really the professional association um, that covers and supports accounting professionals in Colorado. And I say accounting professionals because we really have expanded our reach, that our core is certified public accountants. And they obviously are at the peak of the certification credential around the accounting professionals. But we understand that CPAs can't fully be supported if the profession around them isn't supported. And so we are here to support the accounting profession in Colorado. And by support, what I really mean is that we offer support through the entire professional journey. And that happens primarily in 5 years, 5 areas, excuse me. We make a promise to anybody that chooses to be a member of our organization that we'll have opportunities for them to develop their career, enhance it, make it more fulfilling, that will offer opportunities for meaningful professional connections and developing a professional community where they can relate and learn, that will offer valuable discounts and benefits and service in areas that they need, and that will help them engage in lifelong learning and keeping up to date on relevant information to their career. And then we will represent them in places where decisions are made, which we call advocacy. And so those 5 areas is where we really promise our members to support them throughout their career journey. And sometimes a professional, really relies more heavily on one of those promises over the other. And then something shifts in their career and they really need a different one more than another. So our promise is to be able to support our members in their professional journey. And we've also recognized that over time, we serve the whole person, not just their professional side. So opportunities that we can help them thrive personally because they have these great connections or they're challenged in certain areas, whether that's connecting with other women or we've launched a new series called the See Me series and offering opportunities for people to learn meditation practice to help in their personal experience of their profession. It's just been really cool to watch how we help the individual thrive so that they can thrive in their businesses.
That's funny you say that. So the American Bar has noticed this problem as well. So I'm a CPA and an attorney, and so I went to a conference in Vail of all places about that meditation, and it was really funny because they're like, people are falling apart in law because it's super stressful because you never really have an easy answer. I think being a CPA, you have debit and a credit, and you might hopefully it works out, but we all know it doesn't. But lawyers by nobody calls a lawyer if the answer is
Right,
clear,
right,
right? So it's stressful because they're like, it seems like it could be this, but it could be, it's that kind of stuff. So I think the stress that people are feeling is making them opt out of the
right,
career. And there's some of that as well because you have CEOs saying, I want you to make the books look like this. They need to reflect it this way. Can we do that? And they're like, okay, I have to rethink that. Is that appropriate within GAAP? I mean, there is some pressure too when you're publicly held and all the
that's right.
things to report. And there's a tremendous amount of pressure on the accounting team for that. So, yeah, they see the money coming and going.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
So
Well, and
yeah, that's
so
the society is primarily membership based, and so our members come, pay to be a member of the organization, and as a result, have access to a lot of those benefits, have the opportunity to speak into some of the positions that we end up ultimately taking on behalf of the position in different areas. And one of the things that we've, noticed, back to that shifting, there's not as many people coming into the profession. A lot of our members now are in those age groups of, 40 to 70, which they're more experienced professionals. They are, more established in their careers. And I think that particular age group understands that you do need a support system when you are working in a professional environment. And so I think they really understand the value of where are my networks? Who do I have in my back, pocket? How do I connect people? And I think one of our things that we're thinking about at the Colorado Society is, what about those 20 to 40s that aren't necessarily in the peak of their career? How do we get them involved? How do we engage them so that they understand the importance of a network? We haven't necessarily been creating all this support for them. And so as we think about the future of the profession, like how do we get them engaged in what it really means to be a member of something and be supported in community, not just through your professional LinkedIn page.